card designs. These are not card designs, but card designs. This is something that occurs in almost every single layout. And so in this video, I'm going to refactor 3 designs that I saw that were submitted from my weekly live stream, and I'm going to improve those cards right here. Right on the spot. I didn't pre-design them. I'm just going to design them as they go, and really it's going to help you avoid some pitfalls essentially. All right, so make sure to subscribe and let's get started. All right, so the main problem I have with this right here in these cards is that this is a high contrast background behind the actual type content, and when these are high contrast backgrounds compared to like the background it's sitting on and right here as well, it makes the design look way too blocky. So we're going to fix that. This is a white background, 100% white, so we're going to make ours not white. It's going to be slightly off white, and I'm going to choose it. If you choose HSL over here, it's going to be like around 95%. And then what that's going to allow us to do by having a slightly off white color is we could take our rectangle tool and then make it white. So there's enough contrast for us to see, you know, a difference here. But the focus now is going to be on the content, not necessarily on this big blocky approach right here. So now what I'll do is just take my screenshot tool and I'll copy this. So we're going to use the same exact pictures, or at least just for one of them. And we're going to place it right around here, and then we'll get this moved up somewhere suitable right there. Okay, so now what we'll do is just recreate the content, which says wish and wear. All right, so we'll take T for our type tool, wish and wear. Or wait, is it W-E-A? Yeah, okay. Yep, that's perfect. And so I'm going to use Nunito right here. It's already chosen at size 50. That's solid. We can also see there's typographic issues as well in terms of alignment and a couple other things. First, namely, there's a tag here, and then way down here is the description, but the tags are not styled differently at all from this type. So we have 3 different pieces of type, but only 2 of them are styled differently, which is the title and then everything else. But you make all 3, you want to make all 3 consistently designed in a different aesthetic, essentially. So if I just take this, we'll say, it says it's for this one, we're just going to say mobile. And for tags, tag designs, I kind of like to do a couple different things. And the one I'm thinking for this one, let's just take this down to like 25. And then what I'll do is we'll take our type options here, and we're going to make this all uppercase. All right, and then we could slightly extend the letter spacing. And this is one of the few times I like to do this. Come down a little bit in our size here, and then we could also wrap it around inside of a container and maybe even give it a little bit of color. So if we come out here and we hit I, we can get this color over here, and then we'll drag this underneath. All right, and auto layout is not going to work if this extends outside of this container. So if we hit auto layout, you can see that happens. We just want to take the container temporarily, make it larger, and then hit auto layout, and then we can go ahead and center things vertically and horizontally. And that right there works pretty well. So now next up is going to be the actual paragraph. So I don't have these actual websites up to copy and paste that type, but no big deal. I'll just copy this, and we will get a size here, maybe like, I don't know, 30 for now. And then we will go ahead and just use our lorem ipsum text generator right here and auto generate. And we want to increase the visual hierarchy, so we're going to make this regular. And then also, I think there's a little bit just too much. We'll select this. The letter spacing is just to extend it a little bit more, not letter spacing, but line height. I also will probably remove a little bit of type to make way for an actual button. So read case study. For me, when it comes to card designs and you have multiple buttons within them that are kind of closely related to each other in close proximity, I like to go ahead and make them less stated. I want to make it a little bit more understated. In other words, less contrast, just because there's a bunch of them together makes things look more blocky. So what we could do is take, for instance, that color here. Let's first go ahead and get our type here. It says view case study. All right, and we could actually leave this as uppercase and maybe make it slightly larger. And then we can also hit Shift L, which is going to give us a line tool and with a little arrow. So I think size 2 works well for this. And then we could give it an aesthetic where we have a container around it, but it's going to be an outline style icon. So what we'll do is remove this. We'll give it a stroke. The stroke color, again, I don't want it to be high contrast. Maybe we'll grab this and then we'll just come down maybe right around here. All right, and I would say that's actually pretty solid. We could probably change the color here of the type just to separate it a little bit more, get in that same hue or so. Maybe right there, we'll just do our hex color code, copy that, and then also apply that same color to this as well. All right, and there we go. So now it's simply a matter of duplicating, and we can now see the much more improved design. All right, so before and then after. Notice how it just appears way less blocky. Now, if you wanted to separate these cards a little bit more, you could take and apply, for instance, a drop shadow, but it needs to be done correctly. I'll give one such attempt here. So maybe we'll do 4, blur maybe 2, and then we'll change the opacity. Maybe right around there. Maybe kick that blur back up. Maybe decrease the X and Y value. So this is something you could do as well. I personally would probably just opt to leave it off anyhow. All right, so for the next one, let's get started there. All right, so this one's gonna be a little more involved because there's a lot of content, but it is blocky, especially with this pricing being wrapped in this sort of color up here. I completely disagree with that approach because, again, it just makes things blocky. Also, if you're gonna have photographs in your cards, they should at least consume, in my opinion, half of the cards. Otherwise, they just feel like too small thumbnails and everything is just crammed in together a little bit too much. So let's see if we can refactor this real quickly. And again, just full disclosure, I have not actually designed these already. I'm gonna be redesigning these on the spot. So this one, let's go ahead and we'll use, let's fix this up. I don't wanna use that anymore. We'll use a different font for this one. Let's use Playfair Display, just for this title perhaps. And right now, these are really large frames. They're not actually desktops. Like you can see, the width is like 2400. So that's why at 25, this looks really tiny. So just ignore that. We're gonna make this much larger. Let's see, 100 here. All right. Actually, they're using the same exact font. I didn't even realize that. All right, well, cool. All right, here we go. So I might make this more like 70. There we go. So if you're gonna have a title like this, just make it less understated. You don't have to wrap it in some type of high contrast container like that. It makes it feel blocky, as I've been saying. So now what we'll do is we'll take a rectangle tool and come out right around here, I'd say. Now, if we duplicate this real quickly, not gonna have enough room, but if you're gonna have 4 of them side by side, I would definitely say it would need to look more like this, like right around here. Okay, so let's get rid of that, or all those rather. And then what we'll do is we'll get this color that it's sitting on, and I do agree with the approach that they've had here. It's kind of like the same thing up here, where I took this color and then just made the card colors slightly lighter in value. We're doing the same thing here, except it's just we're starting with a dark background first. So I would say that this is quite a contrast. I mean, I probably would go a little bit less than that. So if we compare these cards, this is clearly darker, my card over here. All right, so now what we'll do is just we'll copy just one of these images like this. Make sure I don't select anything first. There we go. All right. All right, so now what we'll focus on here is getting the titles here. Now there's already a lot of content here, and they kind of try to break them up with low contrast borders, but I still think it's kind of ineffective. There's multiple ways we could approach this. What I would personally do is probably just put in right here the actual title. So this says in office sessions. So let's put it down here. We're gonna say in office. I'm not gonna leave it the same font, by the way. Sessions. All right, and then what we'll do is change this. Let's just go to Poppins or something like that. All right, and we'll come down to like 45. Maybe we can go a little bit more. Let's try like a 60. And then we'll break this into 2 lines in office sessions. And then we already do have an issue with contrast, so let's fix that in a second. So what we'll do is we'll take this this image, we'll add a linear black gradient on top of it. Let's change this to 100% just for now. And then we'll reverse these. And we don't want it quite 100% there, just enough to give us enough separation for the type so that it's visible, essentially. And I think that right there will work quite well. I think. We'll see. Now, alternatively, you could go darker than the background, by the way. So we could do this, and that'll provide some separation as well. Added benefit to doing that is your type in here is going to actually contrast even more so. So now what we'll do is they have some areas over here with like a pricing chart. That's not designed well because everything's designed exactly the same despite 2 different ideas occurring there. So what we'll do is we'll say, I think the 30 minutes should be on the left and then the price should be on the right. That's typically how these things are done. So let's do 40 or so. And I think we probably might keep it bold. So let's probably bump that up to like 35. Oops, not 350, 35 right there. And auto width that. And then we'll duplicate this and we'll put in some type of numerical value. And in order to establish that visual hierarchy, we're going to make this regular. We could also change a color, but we'll see if that's what we want to do. So 30 minutes, $60, whatever. You get the idea. We can now duplicate this. Obviously, you would probably want to make this those components so that if you wanted to change something, you could easily. So for instance, 60 minutes is $120. So we'll change that real quick. Probably would want to right align those values so you don't have to reposition it after changing them, but you get the idea here. I think it's pretty decent. These are pretty pretty thick font weight. We could probably take that down there a little bit, and we could take these values over here and maybe make them a little bit less contrast, something like that. And then there's also a button, a book now button. So for that, let's go ahead and, you know what, maybe just to save ourselves some time, I'll take one of our existing, let's do it from scratch. Look at me, I'm screwing around here. Let's say book now. All right, and again, remember what I said, we kind of want to make situations here when we have multiple calls to action. Now, in this case, there's only 2 of them. So if they're higher contrast, I think that's okay. It's just when you get 3 or more, I think it's a little bit much, it becomes. So how do we want to align this? Right now, they're centering everything, which might be fine. So let's wrap this in a container. Like that. We'll push it down. And they do have a color scheme. I'll see what that looks like if we apply it. Book now. This looks fine in my opinion. So what we'll do is now simply auto layout that, get it centered up, and we could go all the way out, and that way it becomes quite a call to action that really stands out quite a bit. And we can actually do the line separator idea as well. So we'll take our line tool, like right there, and then bump this up. A very low contrast. You wouldn't want to have a high contrast separator here just because it becomes too much and distracting. So take this up. All right, I set this up incorrectly. Never mind me though. We'll duplicate this. All right, and so again, so like home, visit, sessions. There's only 3 of them in this case. Oops. There we go. Let's delete this. And of course, in some of these, they have actual type, like a description. And so how will we style that so that if it looks consistent with each other? Because this is going to push this card down. So what we want to do is we'll probably have to make room for this. So let's push this down as well. And we'll put in a description. So we'll take this type, and it was really just a couple sentences. And then we'll go to our lorem ipsum real quick. Auto generate. Probably come down in size. Increase this a bit. And get things lined back up. All right, so now, as you can see, we can add these other text blips here, and it effectively becomes much more consistently aligned. You can see things like this button slightly up and it's pushed up, and that creates inconsistencies in the design. So you definitely want to avoid that. All right, but overall, like there's a big paragraph section here which we could remove and just take this text and put that over there, and just try to get these cards, they are all the same height here, but there's still discrepancies in terms of how things are aligned. All right, so I think this is a lot better of an approach in terms of the color scheme for sure, because mid grays I tend to try to avoid those as much as possible. And then also the pricing is obviously more understated, and it becomes more about the cards rather than this pricing section that isn't really of that much importance. And then the final section is going to be down here. So what we'll do is I have the same card background here, not the card, but website background. And so we'll just redesign this one because there's a few things happening here that I think could definitely be improved. So we'll take this and we'll get that. There we go. We'll just paste that in over here. And then I could duplicate that, pull this down just a bit, remove that, and add a white fill. So in my opinion, you're going to want to go white or very close to it. You could do this. You can grab this color, come up, and you could leave it right around here. You still have a very small, portion of this hue that it's sitting on, and that could work as well. So maybe I'll just leave it there. Design with sofa and lamps. Okay, so let's take and get our title here. Design with sofa and lamps. I love lamp. Okay, let's make this bold. And yeah, we'll put it right around there, I'd say. See, when you do an outline approach on a mid-value background color like this, it's just it makes it feel bland, and you're not increasing the contrast. Notice how much this stands out way more in this context. So now we can take this, duplicate it, and come down in our size, maybe to like 28, and also make it regular. There we go. Good visual hierarchy, typographically speaking. They've had lorem ipsum, so we'll use the same thing as well. Auto generate. Yep, 2 sentences or 2 lines rather is just fine. And then notice the biggest thing they're doing is they're stacking unnecessarily so 2 buttons on top of each other. And that just makes it a little bit long-winded unnecessarily. So we have the space to put them in 2 columns, not 2 rows. We don't need that. And whenever you do that, they are at least emphasizing one over the other. But let's see if we can approach this perhaps in a different manner. So we'll take this type and we'll just say see design or see price. Although why would you make people see price? Why not just put the price there? Very strange verbiage. From a UX perspective, this doesn't make sense. But just assuming it's what you should do, I'm just going to design for what is here already. So we're going to leave it exactly the same. So see price, we'll leave that there. Again, I think we'll make this 28 because we don't want to compete too much with the headline or the title rather. So then we'll give this a background. Maybe this background could be actually white. All right. So it should give us a little bit of contrast. So if we move this over here, see price. Sometimes it's nice to have icons in these cases. So if we go to Iconify, plugin, and we type in I. All right, we'll drag this over. So see price, have an I. Clever. All right. See price. And we could probably stand to make this like a semi-bold or something like that. Again, we could separate it more by changing the color slightly, getting this hue in there and making it dark. I think this is fine for now. And then maybe we could just right align it in a second column. And we want to change the style of this though, so we can make this an outline style button, which is a good approach when you have 2 buttons next to each other. An outline typically will work pretty well. So right there, that makes sense. See price. This one says see design, I believe. I would say view design, but whatever. In fact, you don't even have to put C. Put design here. Now, I probably wouldn't use the same icon, so we could get something else that has to do with design, like art or a brush or something, or an image. Yeah, let's just do picture. So yeah, this is an outline style, so you want to keep consistent. We could just like take this, slap this over here, make it smaller. Now, typically you want to use something from the same icon set because this is a little bit too, what would you say, thick or so. There, I was able to edit this stroke. Sometimes on Iconify icons, the strokes are already embedded. But there we go. I think that's actually pretty solid. So now we just duplicate this just to kind of get a rough idea of what's happening here. I'd probably want to make this, notice how far apart and much white space are between each of those elements. I don't personally like that approach, so we'll just duplicate this, get these closer together, get these things centered up a little bit more, and then duplicate this, and there we go. So much more effective in terms of the design, certainly in my opinion. All right, everybody, hopefully you enjoyed that and you learned something new about card design, all right? So now, as always, make sure to check out DesignCourse.com if you're interested in learning UI, UX design in an interactive platform, and also make sure to subscribe. I'll see you soon. Bye.